Oh, good morning. The wheels do indeed keep turning. This is the 10 o'clock hour of Love Babs Love Talk. I am talking yet again. I just finished up with Jeff Grant, and we just had Serena Ligorian and doing Criminal Justice Insider. And so right now I have the good fortune of having Commissioner Roland Cook in. Hello.
Good morning.
And we're going to talk a little bit about corrections and reentry and family and all the kinds of things. Just an update.
Sounds
to
great.
Say hello. How are you?
Doing really good.
How long have you been on this job?
A whole year.
Has it been a year?
Yeah. So
I feel like you just got here.
Yeah, I know. I was celebrating 1 year about a week ago.
Really?
So, yeah, it feels good to get that first year under your belt. We've been doing a lot too, so
I know.
Staying busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Honestly, it feels like it's kind of like what we thought. You know, there's a ton of people that want to help, and I think we're making some great progress. So that makes me feel good, and I look forward to the next few years here to get things going.
Now, do you feel like you're building upon your predecessors? Because your predecessors were heavy hitters.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And so we're trying to take it to the next level. You know, Scott was amazing, and I think one of the things we're trying to do is to spread what we do across the state.
Okay.
And not just in specific units. We're trying to build upon the things that they built. And I think we're heading in the right direction.
Okay. Yeah. So what are some of the things? Give me a little idea of some of the things you'd like to see go further and wider across your system.
Well, I guess the first one that you mentioned right as we jumped in here was family reunification. That's sort of one of the intangibles. And although it's intangible, there's actual research that shows that maintaining relationships and reunification with family actually reduces recidivism. So one of the things we're doing is not only we're trying to implement family-related programs and opportunities in for example, our reentry, our reintegration centers. We're trying to do this across the state at all of our facilities. So it's not just for those that are at the very back end of their sentence. So
I see.
Yeah, that's
so
that's
you
one
start
of the things.
early, like you start talking about when you get out before you know what I mean, like
right
at the beginning of your sentence.
Right, including those that have the very long-term sentences. I mean, they still have families, and we've got to find ways to bring those people together. So that's one of the things. For sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so when you bring that together, when you bring people together to talk about that, does that require your staff to have a different kind of set of skills?
Right.
Do you have to bring other people in? Because, historically, running prisons was not about this, what they call touchy-feely kind of stuff.
That's
you come
right.
in, you do your time. We're not interested in whatever else that needs to happen to make this, a life-changing experience for you.
That's it exactly. And we're taking a look at not only our academy training and the way that when we hire people and we train them, many times it was in a sense paramilitary, the way that we train, and we're looking to enhance that with many of these different programs and stuff, because they need to understand what the rest of us are all trying to bring to the system. And it's the piece, honestly, that gets missed. So everyone wants progressive corrections reform, but you hit it right on the head, is that we've got to make sure the people that are working in there have the training, have the tools, the communication skills, all those kind of things. And many of those things can be taught. And I try to avoid the touchy-feely thing. The way I talk about it is it's about how do you talk to people? How do you deal with people? It's not necessarily touchy-feely. It's just the way we should all be treating each other. So
that's a good point.
Yeah.
So do you find that people are receptive to it? Because I think people have a real misunderstanding of what prison ought to be.
Yeah, I think obviously there's some that are having difficulties with this. Babs, I think I told you the first time I was here, when they hired me back in '89, it wasn't because I was a super smart, great communicator and had all this empathy. They hired me for size and athletic ability. And many of us, that's exactly the way we were trained. But I think you make such a great point that I want you to understand the entire system, all of us, those of us that have been doing this for 30 plus years, to those that have been doing it 5 years, to those that are incarcerated, to the families. we're all in this together.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're all trying to grow. And you're right, the correctional officers, the counselors are doing their best to come along with us. I got to tell you, as I go around the state and I go every week, I visit one of the facilities. So not only I talk with our staff, I'm also talking with the incarcerated folks. And there is a ton of support for this, and they want more. And that's what I'm saying is we started really with True and Worth, right?
Yes.
But now we're expanding through our other facilities.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I you know, when Andrew and I came for the father family dance, I mean, it was so. You know, I've never experienced anything like it, and that was the first time I've been back to prison since I left prison. So I was, you know, I had a whole lot of issues about walking back in, you know, into a prison. But I went because it meant so much to Andrew's mother to sort of help support this.
Yeah.
But I was so moved by the way that these men, first of all, decorated the space.
Right. Yeah, they did it.
I mean, they decorated the space.
So touchy-feely.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was well done.
It was.
And the way that they were with their family and their children, and you know, they were, you know, you could catch conversations where people were saying, you know, I didn't sleep last night because I knew my kid was coming.
Yeah.
You know, I knew my wife was coming. I knew my family was coming. Like, I didn't sleep at all because, you know, this is the first time that they get to actually come in here and, you know, see me, and I get to interact like a normal dad.
That's right.
You know, so I was quite moved by that.
Yeah, you and I both. I think you saw me. They have to watch me all the time. I see situations like that, I start bawling. You know, I mean, they were playing that song. I think Luther Vandross song.
Yes, Dance with My Father.
I was done.
Yes.
You know, at that point. But in all seriousness, it really is an amazing event. We plan to do one in York here real soon as well for the women's side.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a collaborative effort between us with DCF, with Commissioner Durantes, and also with the Department of Early Childhood. That's Commissioner Bai. It was a team, and then
because
all
it
the
takes
folks,
a lot to. You
was.
just can't just say, "Oh, we're gonna do this." It
Right.
takes a lot of planning and coordination to get this right.
But it was fun, and you know, and that's a perfect example too, where you know staff are going, "What are you doing?
Because
Is this really going to work?"
Yeah, like.
And then when the incarcerated came back after that event, they were changed.
Yeah.
And the staff realized, hey, this is stuff we can do.
Yeah.
And they understand that's how they would feel if their families came to see them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good. I mean,
love it.
I think that was a good idea. I mean, you know, doing that kind of stuff I know is tricky in prison because anything could happen, right? Anything could jump off in another part of the prison, not so much with that, but things happen and you got to be ready to deal with that at a moment's notice. So
that's very true. And what I've tried to do is I try to prepare our leadership. I try to prepare our staff. I even prepare the governor. You know, one of the things I said is, you know, we're going to be progressive and we're going to be doing things and someone's going to mess up. And that's got to be where we say, we're not going to stop. We're going to fix that problem. What do we do right? What do we do wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And continue in the right direction.
Do you feel like the governor has faith in your abilities?
Well, I hope so. He easily could have said, "Hey,
No.
that year was enough." So I think I'm meeting his expectations, and he's meeting mine as well as a leader. He really provides me the ability to implement a lot of these things and to move forward. And the big part, as I mentioned, that he's spoken to us about is that collaborative piece, making sure we're working with all the other departments. It makes sense.
Yeah,
and that's what made that dance a success.
And it wasn't, you know, it was what 10, 15 men, maybe something like that.
Yeah, I think
it wasn't a lot of men.
Yeah, I think it was like 15 to 20. And again, that word spread throughout the state. So I'd be going out talking to other facilities, and the guys in the other facilities are going, "Hey, Cook, we're going to be doing that in ours." And that's what I'm telling you is we're trying to look at ways that we can spread this out, so it's not just at the reentry place.
Yeah.
That that builds pride.
Yeah.
It gives you hope.
Yeah.
And that's shouldn't just be in one facility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Do you feel like, Commissioner, do you feel like we are moving slowly away from a military style prison experience? Do you see any inklings of that?
Oh, sure. I think, in fact, Karen and I were talking on the way here. In fact, I think it's about being deliberate in moving in that direction. I think what I see is I see a lot of people thinking you can just change this system just like this by a snap of a finger and just opening all the doors and making everything will be okay. And the reality is it's important for us to remain deliberate in what we do and methodical in a sense, and make sure that we're taking the time to move through all of these things, because it can be difficult not only for the staff, as we've talked about, that need the training and the ability to learn, but also for those who are incarcerated. They're like, what the heck are you doing? Why do I have to sit in this circle? Why do I need to? And I know that may surprise some people, but there's some that just don't want to initially participate until they see the impact. I mean, I would even see that, for example, Babs, in that dance. Oh, whatever. They're just, bringing some people in. It's just false hope. And then that person comes back after being with his family and talks to him and says, no, man, that gave me, I'm going to accomplish what I want to accomplish here, and I'm going to be ready when I get out. I'm going to be a better father.
Yeah.
And then you circle that. We're doing so many things like around the parenting classes, and I heard your previous visitor here talking about those things. That's exactly what we're implementing, and that leads us down that road away from sort of a paramilitary style of supervision.
Because I think I'm of the mindset that if they're not connected back to their families, that there's a piece of your humanity that gets lost. I think
not only does it get lost, it gets lost with the family.
Yeah.
You got these young kids, that don't have their parent at home, and that makes their lives more difficult, no matter what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for everybody in the picture to understand that bringing the family in is a big part of everyone's success.
And children came dressed up. Like, people came dressed like, I was amazed at the level of dressed upness.
Yeah.
That people really took this seriously.
Well, again, we're very proud of it. I think, in fact, one of the things we'd probably like to do the next time is to even have the fathers dress up a little bit more.
Yeah.
To have that opportunity.
Yeah.
But you notice too, though, one of the things I was noticing is it gave them the opportunity to parent.
Yes.
There's times where the moms are going, the kid was acting up a little bit, had a little bit of punch and cookie.
Yes.
And I could see the mom going, yeah, you manage it, but then again, and we have, what was great, we had counselors and stuff there too that could help them through those things. But
I tell you what else, what the thing that had the most lasting, and Andrew and I talked about this on the way home, the thing that I found the most memorable is that you didn't allow the press to be exploitive. Like, you just didn't do that.
No.
And I mean, I appreciate the press being there to sort of say, this is what's happening. But you didn't allow the press to be exploitive. And I really appreciate it, because I didn't want these men to feel like they were in a zoo and look at them and look at their children. But, they shared what they wanted to share, and then that was it, right? Like, it wasn't, tell me your story, tell me why you're here, tell me. It was none of that. It was, listen, I'm glad to see my kid, I'm glad to see my dad, this is the best day ever, kind of stuff. And then and then you shut it down.
Yeah, Babs,
I appreciated that.
You're so observant. I mean, that's our approach, and I would say that's my approach. And sometimes that's not necessarily the way that all the word gets out about all the amazing things you do. What are we really doing this for? Are we doing it for accolades? Or are we doing it to be on the news? Or are we doing it to help these people get their lives back? And some of them want, to be honest, you want your privacy.
Yes.
And so it's that delicate balance we're always trying to figure out of inviting the media and the press. But I think what we try to rely on is word of mouth.
Yeah.
We've made that through where we're out in the communities, meeting with folks and with families, bringing the families in, meeting with the incarcerated, talking to them, and spreading it that way instead of trying to make it some sort of, something that's too shiny and more about I just want the press to make me look good.
Yeah. Kind of thing. And you didn't allow public officials to go on either. No, like, you didn't allow any of that either.
Well, that would have been up to them if they chose.
But they took their cues. I mean, they took their cues from you because you didn't stand up there and go on and on and on. I mean, you
No.
was like, "Thank you for coming." I was like, "Oh," I was like, "He doesn't even want to talk to them."
Yeah.
And then everybody else took their cues. They didn't make it about them.
That's right. Well,
And it was really nice to see that for a change.
It shouldn't be about them. It's about those people and their families.
So to do this in other places, and to connect with other organizations to help pull this off, like does that mean you have to like dedicate staff to this? Like how do you manage that?
It's extremely difficult. We were talking about that the other day. I was meeting with our programs and treatment leadership because I wanted a review of where we were at so we could prioritize it because we've got so many things that we're doing. And it just lost my train of thought, Babs. What did you say again? Remind me, feed it back.
It's like the commitment of staff to this.
Oh, yes. So it does take a great deal of staff, but what we're trying to do, we're also trying to incorporate volunteers. We're also incorporating the, I should say, previously survived. I heard the previous person you were talking with, survivors, but the previously incarcerated we're now bringing them in more and involving them in the process with the mentoring piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just down at MYI the other night. We were having the basketball tournament, the championship game for the kids and stuff. And as we walked through there was another program going on, and it was being led by a person, according to many of the staff that have been around here a long time, said they couldn't believe he was the one leading a class, talking to these kids about how do you get yourself back on track, providing them the support and the avenues, and here's what you do when you get out, and here's the things you need to do while you're here. So it's involving all of those folks, and I got to tell you, I was like, there's so many advocates, there's so many providers in the state,
Mm-hmm.
that we've been trying to coordinate with them to make these things go, because there's no way we can do this all on our own.
And I mean, I'm glad that you say that, because you don't have the resources, one, to sort of pull this off by yourself.
Right.
You know.
And it's tough to find funding for stuff. So we work in that area too. We try to get funding and things like that when it comes to the budget. But if we're just going to wait for money, we're going to be waiting a long time.
That's true.
In my 30-plus year career, I don't think that corrections has ever had all the funding that they need. But you still got to move forward. You got to continue to provide it.
So, a year in, have you met the expectations that you set for yourself on arrival?
I think so. I don't know that I ever meet my own expectations. I'll be honest. Pretty hard on myself. But what I will tell you, Babs, is as I mentioned the other day, I met with the programs and treatment director. I was blown away. I've provided me a 6-page document of all the programming and different things that we've started up just in that past year. And I was absolutely blown away. The work that goes on inside of our facilities to move progressively, for example, away from what you're talking about, where we're trying to get more people out doing activities and getting our staff trained. I think we're making great strides. For me, I got to tell you though, Babs, it's never enough. But that's what's allowed me to come across and work in this type of position. Is I know that there's always work to do. The key thing, though, I have to tell you, is I think it has to be tempered in a sense, because you can burn people out, including our staff, as they try to learn and to become more adapted. You can wear out those that are incarcerated. You can wear out those that are trying to help. But I
that's true.
I try to. I don't, and in fact, I don't want to brag, but what I want to tell you is I think we've done a ton of stuff. But I think there's still a lot of work to do.
So how do you take care of your staff? How do you foresee or stave off that kind of burnout? Because you come with this new energy, and that makes everybody around hopeful about, okay, we can turn this prison complex thing around a bit, a little bit. you know, everybody's on full speed ahead.
Right.
How do you sort of like, okay, all right, everybody.
I think first of all, you get them involved in the process.
Mm-hmm.
People want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. That's the reality. I know when I was growing up inside of the organization, I hated it when my boss, whether it was a sheriff or commissioner or director, was telling me what I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important, you know, I give the general direction. We set the tone, we give the strategic plan, and then we incorporate them in that solution. The other thing is you provide training to these folks and help them understand. What's amazing is one of the things they start to realize, I know I did, is you get into this line of work, public safety, thinking that you're going to go and be help people and solve things,
Mm-hmm.
and you end up in corrections, and it's so negative. And again, I just referred to the other night. I was down at MYI and I was talking to an officer who was, you know, is one of the tough guys, and now he's in one of our reintegration units where he's helping these guys prepare for reentry.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he told me, I got to tell you, Commissioner, it's the first time in my career that I'm happy that when I go home, I'm not all burned out, and when I get to my family, I'm in a better mood. I feel like I'm doing something for the first time rather than just warehousing people.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
It just takes time.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing I would say is everyone wants it all now. And
do you think people know what they want now? Because listen,
No.
I pay attention to what's going on in prisons across this country, and I just saw this piece. I guess was it Mississippi or wherever these prisons are having these bad physical. The prison itself is physically terrible.
Yeah.
And I know that the people that are incarcerated are stressed, but the people that have to go and work under those conditions have got to be equally stressed when they have to work under those conditions where you're on the other side of the bars, but you're still in that horrible place where, you know, everything is broken, nothing is working, that kind of thing. And that can lower your morale, and that can really make you feel, you know, disassociated from the people, from the work that you do.
Babs, you could write your own leadership book. That's exactly it. I mean, the way that we look at it is, you know, the way that you treat your employees is the way that they're going to treat your customers. Mm-hmm. And this is the same situation. And so when we look at these things, we are always looking for ways that we can make their jobs better, their jobs easier. When we do look for things such as, or when we try to get a HVAC or air conditioning into some of the old facilities, not only are we looking to try and help the folks that are incarcerated there, but also the folks that work there every single day.
Yeah.
Again, it's that positive message. Is it perfect? No. You still got, you know, there's grumpy people that are always going to be there, that they didn't start their career this way, and they have a certain mindset. But many of them are retiring out, and I would tell you, many of the generations that are coming in, and even those that have been there 10, 15 years, are really open
to something else.
Do something else.
Yeah.
They know we can help these people, and I see a lot of positive in that for sure.
Because I think about this quite a bit, because I mean, whether you're on the other side of the bars or not, you're doing this time with people. Like, you're doing this time.
Yeah, so I'm a survivor too. Yeah, I heard that previous conversation. That's exactly how we feel, as sort of a survivor mindset. But it goes back to some of the stuff that's going on in that True unit, where you have the staff working alongside with the mentors that are in there, that are the incarcerated, helping the mentees who are incarcerated, along with the advocates from the outside and everything. Again, that's the perfect model. Is you understand it's going to take a team to make this thing go.
So how do you deal with the public relations part of prisons? Because that's a tough one. I was listening to Angela Davis last night at Yale. She was at Woosley Hall speaking on the MLK. She was giving an MLK lecture, and she was talking about the prison industrial complex and the insidiousness of it. And it is on a lot of levels. But she also talked about the other side of it, the artistic and the humanity side of ourselves, and what we need to do to make this world better. And I just wonder, how do how do you frame out for yourself this work? Because the minute you say you're the correct commissioner of corrections, people's imaginations just run rampant, I would
They
imagine.
do. Yeah, it's constantly a battle. Not only for me personally, but also as an organization and also as a profession.
Mm-hmm.
And we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we're as transparent as we can be,
Mm-hmm.
trying to make sure that we're um, explaining and letting people know the realities of these things without it being just as you talked about before. Try not to be a showboat about it. It's a delicate balance. We also deal with a lot of negativity that goes on
Yeah.
in there. There's bad things that happen
Yeah.
inside facilities, and it's a difficult balance.
Mm-hmm.
I think the key thing is people that come into these positions should be held to the highest standard. They have to be of high character. You can see the drain. I know when my family sees me that a lot of times they'll go, "Wow, that's have that's a difficult job on you," and yeah, it is. But you choose to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and again, it's not easy, and it's just something that you address every single day.
Mm-hmm. So are you hopeful about the are you hopeful about where uh prison is going and the
Absolutely.
models in this country?
Yeah, absolutely. So I also get to spend a lot of time with my peers from across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And if you'd have told me 30 years ago that we'd be talking about things like we had just the other day where Representative Porter came in and along with the committee, Collateral Consequences
Oh
Committee, I think,
yes, yes, yes,
I'd have
yes.
told you crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't never going to happen. Uh, there's a ton of hope. Everyone across the country really is making the effort to raise that standard of performance and that standard of care. And so I feel very comfortable that the country's heading in the right direction. And what's amazing is we're all doing something different,
Mm-hmm.
but we communicate. We honestly we steal from each other all the time. I was just with one of my peers in Oregon. She's from Oregon, and they're doing some great stuff that's similar to True, but a little bit different. It's more like sort of an apartment living.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they found it in Norway, and she's got some ideas. And so when I saw it, I thought, what a great thing to possibly do at York. So Warden Carlos and I have had some conversations. We'll be reaching out to them. So it's constantly exchanging information and wanting to rise to that new level.
So is York the only women's prison in
That's
the
correct.
state?
That's correct.
And how many women are there? Do you know?
About 800, I believe.
Oh, that's a lot of women.
Yeah, it is, and it has decreased, but we still have a lot of work to do in that
Mm-hmm.
particular area, I believe.
Now, do you think about women's? Do you think about the prison for women differently than you think about the rest of your facilities? Do you think about that differently, and how so?
Well, in many ways we do. The way that you do programming, the way that you supervise them is different. You have to remember, and again, these are things we're learning. If you'd have asked me this 20 years ago, I'd have said no, they're all the same. But there's a lot of trauma that women have gone through, a lot of PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the programming obviously is gender responsive and centered around the things that women face every day, or faced in their lives, and so it is different. In some ways, it's the same. It's just a different challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But I want you to know, and what people oftentimes don't understand is the things that we help them with is centered around the things that go on in women's lives.
Mm-hmm. So what got you to this place of thinking about prison differently? Like, when did that shift happen for you?
Mm.
When did that happen? Because you came. I mean, you have a career and you came up through the ranks through this, and I'm sure you've had different examples of how to do this.
Sure.
What was that shift like for you?
So I would tell you two things. The first thing comes from the way I was raised and the people I was around. So I told that story a little bit, but my family, my parents come from a very poor background, and they, I don't know, always professed to us that importance of being able to help the people around you
Mm-hmm.
and to be grateful for the things you have. When I got into corrections, it didn't take long to figure out that wasn't what this was about, and I was getting into what I thought law enforcement was where I was headed originally, and it just wasn't happening. the the catalyst to what changed me was I was given the opportunity to be involved in the design and the transition of a state-of-the-art correctional facility that moved from the old linear style of facilities, which many of the facilities we have are, where it's the bars with
Mm-hmm.
the incarcerated on one side and the staff on the other, and that's their area and this is ours, to a facility that was designed with direct supervision involved, and that's what changed it all. I had a sheriff and a chief that believed in me for whatever reason, and said, Roland, we're moving from this style of supervision to this style of supervision. You're going to be the transition team coordinator that's going to move our organization forward with that. And that included all these things you and I have talked about, improving communication, giving officers conflict resolution skills, um, all those types of things. Building that facility, being involved in the transition piece especially, is the thing that changed the way that I looked at it, because it was a success, and it is today. It's still run by setting expectations, by treating these people like people,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of the thing that sprung forward. And then other things, as you move up, you get a little more say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, young people facility, children in prison. How many do we have? We have children in prison here in
Right.
Connecticut.
We have one facility, and that's the Manson Youth Institute.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we have a handful of what I would consider children for sure that are there. And we've been doing a ton of work. The Office of Child Advocate. When I first got here, sitting on my desk my first day was this audit, and we've been working hard. And when I say we, the accolades truly need to go to the warden that's there. It's Derek Molden, and the deputy wardens that are there.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, to those that are incarcerated there, those kids, they have attacked that audit from every angle and have addressed all the different issues that have come up, and have even taken it to a new level. I mean, the warden that we moved in there, he, something simple as starting up a basketball league. Many of these kids had never really had that opportunity to participate in that, and it isn't that they get to burn off some of that energy they have, which is a positive, but it's that the things they learn about being a team member.
Well, that's what
and
sports
being
does.
mentored.
Leadership, right? I mean, that's what we put our kids in sports, to learn leadership,
Right.
teamsmanship, and all that kind of stuff.
And when you're mad and when you're physical, you don't have to fight about it and all that kind of stuff. But they've also been addressing the medical aspects. They've been addressing the education aspects and bringing in substitute teachers, so there's no downtime.
Mm-hmm.
Increasing the amount of counseling. They've been bringing in the families. That's the other thing, is they've been bringing in the families to help with the programming and the counseling, and to reunify them. One of the sad things, though, there honestly is that many of the families have been pulled apart.
Yeah.
They're no longer, connected.
Yeah.
And so when that is the case, then we're also bringing in mentors from the community to provide that sort of parenting for them. And then we don't just give up on the families. We still try to pull them together and work through those things. But a lot of stuff has been accomplished.
Do you have good partnerships around children who are incarcerated?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of providers that we use and advocates that work in there with us. In fact, the Office of Child Advocates is still there with us as we walk through each one of these steps. In fact, that we have the Department of Justice that's coming in to take another look there, and I'm confident that they're going to be going. There's a lot of great things here, and here's some more things that could be improved. But we are open to all of those folks to come in and provide those services, because we're limited in what we can provide resource-wise, and so we try to incorporate them as much as we possibly can.
Now, are there girls in prison? Or
Yes.
do they go to York, or do they?
They're
Okay.
housed in a specific unit at York.
Okay.
And that's actually, if I remember right, it's sort of it's one of the apartment type of setting
Okay.
for them. And thankfully, there's a very few of them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because I was wondering about that. It's like, well, where do girls go?
Yep.
And what do those facilities look like for them?
Right.
And
Warden Carlos there does the same things that Warden Molden's doing at Manson. She formulates the specific programming and stuff, and the things around them are for women and for children or for youth. specifically.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would imagine you have a very impossible job, and sometimes you get bad press.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get things that are just things happen and it's bad. How do
It is.
you how do you mobilize? What do you do? How do you handle? Is there a protocol when things happen? Because that can break morale really easily when you have bad things
Yeah, absolutely.
happen.
So we rely a lot on the leadership. So, for example, when things happen specifically at a certain facility, we rely on the leadership that's there,
Mm-hmm.
and try to be the support for them as well. But get in and try to meet with the employees. If there's things that go on where an officer ends up in the hospital, we try to make sure that we get out to them. I try to make phone calls anytime our staff are involved in a major incident. Um, Same with the incarcerated. If we have a major incident happens, we make sure that we get counselors and stuff in there. When if you think about it, even when you have a death or something, it affects everybody.
Yeah.
It's the folks that are trying to provide the life saving aspects of things. It's the incarcerated that are there watching a person pass away, or someone's attempt suicide. Those are all traumatic, and so what we do is we try to surround each other with counseling, and our officers also have for example, an employee assistance unit that has been put together along with work from the union, where it's peer-to-peer support
Mm-hmm.
that sends right out to them, because oftentimes they don't want to talk to a commissioner from Utah. They don't want to talk to the administration.
Yeah.
They want to talk to their peers. They'll open up more, and that's how we get them help and try to deal with those situations.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Babs, corrections oftentimes is negative, but we try to fill it with energy and positive energy whenever we can. That's my job, I believe.
So the legislative session is about to start up again next month.
Yes.
And budgets and all that kind of conversation. Are you prepared?
Oh, as prepared as you can be. We're trying to do a lot of meetings prior to,
Mm-hmm.
and meeting with the legislative leadership, and also with OPM, with Secretary McCaw in the governor's office. Also, Mark Pelka from OPM, and I think we're as ready as we can be.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that we need to be ready for is to be involved and engaged, and to be there and to help provide information and provide insight,
Mm-hmm.
and be part of the solution, like I talked about before. And again, it's been nice to have a full year of being able to develop some relationships. When you get here, nobody knows you, so there's always that fear. Here comes that commissioner.
What is he gonna do?
Yeah, what is he gonna do? So that's nice to have those relationships.
Now, do you have to comb over your budget? Like, are you preemptive with your budget? Like, you're like, okay, let me make sure our team goes over this to see if we have to make cuts, if we have
constantly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nonstop. And we try to make sure that we're meeting the expectations of the governor's office and OPM, and also the expectations of everyone we provide for.
Mm-hmm.
So we're constantly going over that and looking for ways. We're always applying for grants. We have some specific people within our organization. That's all they do,
Mm-hmm.
is work to try to help find funding that way. It's definitely part of the process every day.
So how do you shore up your skills? What do you do? Do you go to conferences? Do you talk to other people?
Yeah.
Are you reading stuff? Are you a member of like corrections commissioners or us?
Yeah. Yeah, you're actually right. Yeah. So, and that's some of those conferences and stuff that I talk about. About 3 times a year, we participate in conferences with all the other corrections leaders from across the country. So the commissioners, executive directors, plus also from places like Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
And we come together and we talk about what are the things that are going on across the country. Sometimes, like, for example, it's great because sometimes we're the ones that are presenting. For example, if it's the medicated assisted treatment stuff that we provide. Then there's other times where they're presenting on a specialized unit that they've talked about, or we're talking about solitary confinement, restricted housing. So we're constantly getting updates from a national perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We also go to the Washington D.C. and meet once a year. We try to meet with our federal legislators up there and talk about what things are going on at home that maybe they can help us with up
Mm-hmm.
there in DC. Then the other thing is I'm not a big reader, but what I am is a big listener. So I'm traveling across the state all the time. I'm always listening to audiobooks, trying to improve my own head, keep my head straight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then the last thing is you just try to find some family time, and
Okay.
for me, that's always a challenge right now.
Yes, because your family's still, oh, well,
Yeah,
in Utah.
yeah, and my wife will be here permanently here
Yes, ooh,
summertime, so
she's a
we'll take.
lovely, lovely woman. So I know there's some folks who are working around ending or eradicating solitary confinement, and I'm just starting to hear some of that conversation. Um, is solitary confinement necessary,
Boy,
or
that's
is it a case by case? Like I don't,
yeah. It's so
because what I understand, sometimes oftentimes it's misused in lieu of something else.
right, and I think that's the key thing is that my hope is that someday, yeah, we will be able to have a system that we're able to rely on. That every person that comes into our correctional facilities that would be required. That is really my hope. Again, it's got to be something that's incremental. It's going to be something that takes time to be able to implement. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we see things that go on across the country, even recently up in Massachusetts, where uh, you see some attacks and stuff on staff,
Yeah.
and so that immediately gets blamed on the reform. And I think it's important that you need to know, and that the people here in Connecticut need to know, is that we're continuing to constantly look at what we're doing in restricted housing. Um, Even since I got here, we're looking at ways that we can provide more programming, more out of cell time, um, providing opportunities for them to be able to progress out.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting enough, I mean, to be completely honest, I actually have um, the incarcerated folks that don't want to progress out of that restricted housing piece. And I mean, to me, that's a dynamic that is so difficult to understand. I think, and when I think of it, I think, well, they just don't understand what we can provide or what can be better. They've learned to isolate in some ways. Their way of dealing with, I don't have to deal with all the other people that are in these other units. I can be in my own space. This is what I'm comfortable with. So there's that whole dynamic of getting them, okay, it's being uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and here's why, and here's the programs, and here's the things that we can provide to make your life better and make your mind better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not an easy answer. But I think the thing everyone needs to know is it's important to us. We're working with Yale. We're working with different um, people in our state to address those very issues, including our people,
Mm-hmm.
our own employees who are wrapping their mind around that change.
Because people are very concerned about this, and I don't
They
know.
should be.
Yes, they should be. Is there protocols in place for solitary confinement of children?
Yes, and so very few, very few of our children, our youth, end up in any sort of restricted housing for any length of time.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that was one of the things that the Office of Child Advocate asked for. In fact, I was there the other night. I told you I was a Manson youth, and we
Mm-hmm.
went down to the areas where uh, the youth would be isolated in that way, and there was no one in any of those cells. The thing you need to know is that there's direct observation from officers and from health services staff in that particular area as well. But um, it's it is a difficult topic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what a lot of people don't understand, Babs, honestly, is that unfortunately the things oftentimes that have gone in this kid's life lead them to very violent tendencies and how they react to things, which makes it difficult for us to manage. So, for example, to be able to put somebody, for example, I even send kids to their room, right? When they've been fighting with each other, my two sons, I'd be going, "You need to go to your room, and you go to your room," just to provide some downtime. Um, Many of these kids have been, victims of violence themselves. They've been around it their whole lives. They don't know how to deal with it exactly. So you put them right back together, and there's more fights. So it's such a dynamic thing that we have to constantly be addressing it, looking at what ways we can solve it, and gradually, and more importantly, allowing more out of cell time as much as possible. Uh, Again, there at MYI, I'm so impressed with what they've done there to get the kids out more, keep them engaged in school. Simple things like lighting, changing the paint,
Mm-hmm.
providing them opportunities to work with greyhound dogs, providing them the basketball outlet. All those kind of things, I think, help us move away more and more from restricted housing.
Mm. Prisons are the highest providers of mental health care.
Oh,
and that's got to be exhausting, because I don't know if that was on your radar 20, 30 years ago. Not at this level.
Definitely not at this level, but what we did know is we knew that we were, even 20 years ago, we knew we were the mental health provider. And what I think is important to remember, it is exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting. And we need to continue to figure out ways that we don't incarcerate people
Mm-hmm.
for their mental illness. That's got to be the key component. What resources do we have in the community? Why are we keeping them in an incarceration setting? But then again, when you say you're going to be the commissioner, when you say corrections has these folks in their facility, that makes it our responsibility to provide the very best care we can
Mm-hmm.
while they're with us. And so we have to constantly be looking at ways, how are we housing them? What sort of services are we providing? We can't use that excuse, because we'd still be screaming. It'd be, for the last 30 years, honestly, we kind of have been screaming from corrections point of view, saying, why are you sending mentally ill for us to deal with? And that's great, but you can't just ignore the fact they are there.
Yeah, that they're there.
So you got to provide it. You got to provide it. It's what we do. So,
Mm-hmm.
Let's get moving on some mental health facilities in the community, and let's get these folks out there.
I appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
I really do. I these are things that I knew that the community were interested in, particularly around isolation and mental health kinds of things.
Right.
But I know people wanted to know what else was going on inside of corrections in Connecticut, and some of the cool stuff that's going on, particularly around reentry. Like, what are we doing? Like, how are we turning people loose? Are we preparing them before they leave?
And you didn't even let me talk about employment stuff we're doing and housing. We got a lot of stuff that I think people are going to be very impressed with.
That's good, because I think I'm starting to sort of see people take reentry further into people's sentences rather than waiting till like the last month before they're released.
It begins when they arrive.
Yeah.
For us, that's what we're beginning when they arrive, and building those skills. So when they get out, they have the best chance of success.
Yeah, and you don't see them come back to your.
And they can be survivors.
Yes, can be survivors. Yes, we're survivors.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome here anytime.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Brian. We're on our way out. Thank you all for listening. I'll be back on Monday for Motown Monday. Oh, no, it's MLK, so I'll be playing some MLK. Although I know MLK was a fan of Motown music, because he was. So I'll be here playing some of some tributes to MLK and whatever else we can get into on that holiday. So I will see y'all. Have a really great weekend. Thanks.
Bye.